Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another episode of Contruent's True Talks. Today, we're going to focus on the methods in the madness, decoding capital programs and project delivery. I am really excited to be joined by two of my colleagues at Contruent, Jack Pollock and Dan O'Connell. Jack, Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Guys, what about? Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining. Guys, why don't we start with just a brief introduction of your backgrounds and your current role at Contruent. Jack, why don't you lead us off?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Andy. So my name's Jack Pollock. I have been working in the construction industry for 30 years, possibly. The last dozen years, I've been working on some of the largest programs and projects in the UK. So High Speed 2, Lower Thames Crossing, Horizon Nuclear Power, Transport for London, working for client side predominantly, but through a lot of our construction consultancies. So work with some of the best out there. So Arcadis, Faithful and Gould, Gleeds, Mott MacDonald, PwC, always representing the client, always pushing to improve the way that we do business. The last dozen years or so, I've been using Contruent from client side to drive pretty much business transformation. So for me, joining Contruent, great. It's the next step, very positive. So thank you. Great to be here, Andy. Looking forward to this chat.
Jack, as always, appreciate you, buddy, and thanks for joining us today. And this will be the first of many. We're going to bring Jack and Dan on throughout the year as we continue the True Talks. Dan, over to you, bud. What about a quick background and talk a little bit about what you're doing here at Contruent?
Sure thing, Andy. Thanks. Yeah, similar to Jack, my background is that I've been working construction for approximately 35 years. As a professional client surveyor, started off before moving to the UK. Since being in the UK, I've worked on some of the major programs that the British government has been funding. Crossrail, the Channel Tunnel Rail Link, various other projects with Network Rail, also worked with Transport for London for a long time. And finally, before joining Contruent, I was with National Highways on a major program they have there. So similarly, started off in small projects and then moved like Jack into the larger area of managing portfolios. So really pleased to be here.
Appreciate both you guys, and it's just amazing when we have the expertise and experience that you guys bring into our organization. It makes our jobs a lot easier, guys. I appreciate that. Guys, let's dive in. Jack, I'll start with this. When you look back at the projects you supported over the years, you've mentioned many of them here this morning. When you started, when the people, the process, and the systems were all in place before the project started, what were some of the expected outcomes?
So when everything's in place, in theory, it should all be easier. I've worked on a few significant programs where we've had, on the face of it, we've had everything. We've had the process, we've had the procedure, we've had systems, but what we were lacking was the piece that connected everything. And for me, that's what we've found Contruent provides is that instead of having SAP and Excel and ARM and P6 and all of the other softwares, I mean, actually one of the clients I was working for had 600 different software packages. Making order out of that comes, I mean, I think I've probably done half a dozen implementations using Contruent software before I joined the company. Each one has been transformational in making the business communicate, making those processes come to life. To make them, it makes them simple, gives you a framework that everyone understands, gives you consistency. I mean, for me, that is the joy piece. Having everything available didn't necessarily mean that it worked. You still end up with the same challenges. So working as an integrated team didn't necessarily happen because there was nothing pushing everyone together. Sharing consistent information. So we didn't have a single source of data, even with the systems and the process, even with the process and procedure in place. we always struggled to communicate to leadership. In fact, a recent client said he had three large programs all reporting to him on the same day, and the first 10 minutes of each presentation is figuring out what the message is, because they're all subtly different. They're all using subtly different words to describe where they're at. So I think, and the other piece that we don't normally set up is how you tell the story. At the moment, everybody knows why we added in £60 million in a 6-month delay, but in 18 months, that record and that corporate memory will have faded. Capturing all of the changes, and I don't just mean change in scope, I mean changes to forecast, changes to all of our expectations, why we did something differently, adds huge value to where we are in a program. So, I mean, for me, I think the expectation is always really high, but it's how you bring that to the fore and make everybody start to communicate.
Jack, it sounds like that all starts, even if you have the system, process, and people all lined up. It really starts with tying it back to the original business case of the project. I mean, you and I have spent a lot of hours talking about, that business case that kind of drives everything, right? There's that original design intent, and that, from what you just said to me, you got to tie that up, right? Tie that back, make sure the stakeholders are aligned, and then get to work on the processes. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the business case for me is the start point, because that springboards from the estimate. What I was saying about that corporate memory piece, it's the same in the data too. You need to capture what was the estimate, and then use that to evolve it. And that estimate informs the business case. The business case then has all of the economic benefits associated with it, and the wider benefits. And then the piece of, right, how do you then start to utilize that to move into your procurement phase? How do you then start to break out your estimate and the elements that perhaps were unknown when you did the business case? So, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's the start of the journey, is the estimate, the business case, and then starting to edge towards procurement once you get that approval.
Yeah, appreciate that, Jack. Dan, let's pivot. Let's think about a project that you supported after the project started and was in cost, scope, and schedule performance trouble. What did you do to start that project recovery, and how did you use technology to help with that?
Well, Andy, it was one of the implementations of Contruent Enterprise that actually brought that together. Jack and I were working together for a large transportation company in the UK, and the project that we were asked to go in and implement Contruent Enterprise was, at the time, the teams weren't working well together. They were a little bit in their own silos, and one of the things of introducing Contruent Enterprise was that we brought together the teams, and they started to work together and actually viewed the data that they were producing. So no longer was commercial trying to time phase work differently than the schedule, etc. One of the things that we did when we were doing that implementation was we asked them to look at the scope, go back to the FBC, look at what their remit was. Unfortunately, in doing so, we found that there was a mismatch between the cost and the scope and the schedule, which meant that the business actually then had to look at itself and say, right, how do we pivot now to move to this world where we are using live information, which has been verified through change? And the business actually had to look at itself and go, right, can we afford to do what we're doing the way we're doing it, and look for benefits and cost savings? So that was one of the things that we did, and I believe that project is now delivered on time to their latest baseline, which was real.
Yeah, that's great. Jack, anything to add on that?
Well, I think this is probably the point where we fess up a little. That Daniel and I have been working together for 30 years. So, we've been on this journey together, and for us, it's become, when we both join a program, and we did so recently, a major infrastructure program, in its development phase, the first thing the two of us landed and pushed was, we need to have a backbone to this. We need to have an integrated system where everybody understands where the data is coming from. So I think the piece to add really is once you get that structure right and that communication piece corrected, and establishes everyone's position as well. Daniel mentioned commercial's position. We both come from a commercial background, so we're very strong on what are the requirements of your commercial team. But actually, in the control space, they have a huge role to play, but don't often get invited along in a timely way. So you end up with, the schedule doesn't really reflect how you've contracted. It doesn't necessarily reflect the commercial milestones that you've utilized. It doesn't necessarily reflect the methodology within the contract. So, I mean, for me, that's the bit that it brings together, is it makes the team work as a team instead of just being, groups and functions sitting in a shared space. So yeah, I think that's the overriding piece.
Yeah, I like that a lot, guys. Guys, if we, we talked about projects a bit, we've given a couple of examples, given a couple of good examples, but if we pivot and think about capital portfolio management, right? From, as you said, Jack, in the beginning, from an owner's perspective, right? So you're in there representing the owner. The owner has a big capital portfolio. Talk about the value of it, that you can achieve from having visibility across all the projects in the portfolio, and not just the projects, the headers, the pertinent information at the top, but having that visibility all the way down, to the control account level. What do owners, what do they get from that if they have spent the time and effort, to have that visibility across their entire portfolio? And maybe it is inside a business unit. Maybe it's not the entire company, or maybe it is. I mean, maybe you've got experiences that the entire capital program is being managed. What have you guys seen and the benefits that come from that?
I mean, I think everyone has a boss. So, if you're in a business unit or you're part of a large program, you then report to, I don't know, either shareholders or a government body. And the biggest thing that, not meeting your forecast, I mean, in terms of progress, schedule, cost, that has a debilitating effect and a massive impact on your reputation. So seeing that progress and being able to demonstrate it, I think credibility wise, there is nothing like it. Doing what you said you were going to do when you said you were going to do it. There is nothing like that. I think it also offers you the opportunity, once you've got good visibility of your scope and the schedule and everything else that sits around it, it gives you that ability to manage change. I mean, construction is all about managing risk and change. It's what we do. It's what we do every day. And you've got to react to that. Sometimes you have to reschedule. Sometimes you may have a different strategy you want to deploy. I mean, Daniel and I worked on a large program where for many years we had 100 sites that we needed to do in London. And for the first couple of years, we were picking off the easy sites on the periphery, but it wasn't providing any business value. So what we had to do was recut it to give us a strategy that would then provide the value directly on the projects that we're working on. So it gives you that ability to be able to deploy a strategy. We've also been in a position where, because we're meeting our forecast, we can see what work we can then flex, bring it forward or push it back, depending on business criteria. I mean, where we've been publicly funded, there's often, if you don't use the money in this financial year, it may not be available to you in future years. Or perhaps the converse, there's more money available. What can you do? Having a better grasp of your scope and visibility of your schedule allows you to provide that flex piece. I mean, Daniel, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah. So one of the other things that it allows you to do is look at your supply chain. Look how overworked you are using supply chain. One of the things we managed to do in a program was review all of the design houses that we were employing, making sure that we weren't overburdening one in particular, and then putting all of our so-called eggs in one basket and saying, well, they'll deliver, when in fact we were going to the wrong people. We should have been out there better. I agree 100% with Jack about the ability to look at your finances. We were working in a large portfolio of programs where we were coming up to the end of a cycle of 5 years of funding, and they were having challenges about where they were going to meet that in the next 6 months. because we had a visibility of their schedule and when we were going to need materials, we were able to join these programs together and say, right, if we go ahead and buy this particular piece of equipment now, or this, we put an order in for steel or concrete or whatever it was, we're able to buy it and place orders early, secure our position in the supply chain, and also spend the money in an earlier phase. Therefore, as everybody knows, if you spend today's money today, it's cheaper than tomorrow's money tomorrow. And that was a great benefit. Not only did the business secure its funding and shown that it's able to flex and move, but also we made a saving. And that was one of the most important things we should be looking to do.
Those are great points, guys. And I think that kind of flows into, my next question or my next point, right? So, here we are, we have the portfolio view up and running across all the projects. You have the visibility at the project level, all the way down to the control accounts. Daniel, you mentioned, the importance of the supply chain, is materials on site, is it available, is it ready? But even with that, guys, I mean, talk about, some of the experience. You're ready to roll. You've done the hard work. You've got transactional project activity happening. What possibly could go wrong at that point? And give us some examples of how you recovered from it. And I can't imagine. I think about some of the big projects that I've been part of over my career. I don't think there's ever been a challenge like the supply chain is today. Everyone I talk to that's still implementing projects around the world, I mean, it's really it's a huge challenge. But let's talk about that. What else have you seen that can really derail even the best laid plans? And then how did you guys recover from it?
So we were working together with a company in London, and little did we know it, but we actually were procuring a piece of equipment from Japan. And as you remember, a few years ago in Fukuyama, there was a tsunami. That little piece of equipment put our project in jeopardy of being late. So what we had to do was flex around our schedule, move our delivery dates around, build in time to make sure we could accommodate that, what was an unforeseen, as much as we could do. And then also just bringing to mind now, not so long ago, there was a large tanker stuck in the Suez Canal. That would have affected the supply chain as well. Plus, there's many things going on in the world today which is affecting the supply chain in a great way. And if you're in a bad way, if you're able to manage that through having control over where and when you need things, you can actually adapt and maybe not be so affected by it all.
Jack, anything to add here?
Yeah, I think one of the, I mean, I was smiling because we all have plenty of experience of what goes wrong. I think it's how you react to it. As Daniel was saying about the couple of instances where it's been, Mother Nature that's impacted us. I'm putting the Suez one in there as well. Weirdly, forgive me. But actually, it's our focus when we found out that part was coming from Japan. Our focus had been on the quality of welding, where the major components were being manufactured, and we had put all of our effort into making sure that we had a specific capability available to us, and we'd completely missed the fact that our vulnerability was elsewhere. And so many times when we've been doing a major program, you find that your vulnerability is not necessarily on the critical path that you associated in the first instance. I mean, one of the commercial roles I had was the commercial lead for SCADA on a large electrification program. So supervisory control and data acquisition. So, the techies going out and recommissioning the sites to get the information back to center. What you realize, those guys who are out there building substations and throwing cable on the line, actually you can go as quickly as you like. It's limited by the 20 guys I've got available to recommission. So it completely changed the critical path analysis. But we wouldn't have seen that had we not been looking at, the desire to show the whole program end to end. So instead of being, focused in year or focused for a contract piece, we were looking at the whole of the EFC, so the estimated final cost, And in that, we were profiling the resources that were supporting it. And then that's where the epiphany comes. As you go, hang on a minute, I can't spread that resource that thinly to keep up with the progress. So all of the acceleration measures that were being put in place by aspects of the program, they were all for naught. We were spending money unnecessarily to accelerate, when actually what we needed to do was slow down, make better use of our resources, make better choices, and consider our deployment methodologies. Getting trains involved was slower to organize, but quicker to deliver. And I think that that's so true of our hook line being quicker
Faster
sorry,
to do.
faster to deliver. I was thinking of the word faster. See, we've known each other a while. The
Yeah,
faster to deliver piece is all about consideration.
yeah, it's great.
So
Great examples, guys.
yeah.
Yeah, really, really good examples. And I think the thing that rings out to me is without that visibility of those examples, it would have taken you weeks, if not months, to figure out how to recover. So those are great. Sorry, Jack, I didn't mean to cut you off, but if you had
No,
more
no,
to say.
no, it's good. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, great examples, guys. And again, the power of the data, right? Having it organized and having it communicating up, down, sideways, and backwards is critical to this. Guys, let's shift gears just for a second. If you look back over the years and the challenges and the projects that you've been part of and the programs, what innovative technology today gives you excitement? The capabilities that you're seeing today. And maybe it's not the hardcore, project controls, cost lifecycle management that we deal in every day. But what are some of those technology that you sit back and say, geez, if I had that capability in my previous projects, it could have made a difference. The one that I always, and you guys hear me talk about this often, is the ability to capture progress, real time, as often as you need to. But what are your thoughts, guys? What do you see out there that you get excited about?
Well, I think that the use of phones is actually quite impressive. I mean, as we were talking about the other day, everybody is carrying a phone around in their pocket these days, all around the world. And the use of that technology to be able to give live current information and share it. So when something is constructed or concrete is poured or a hole is dug or something is commissioned, a photograph is taken, it can then be immediately distributed to the whole team so they know the work is in place. So that the use of mobile technology is a great innovative leap forward. I was actually thinking about this the other day, and there was a project that I was involved with who designed a health and safety app. And what they did over many months of using it, they were able to establish when was the safest time to get a concrete load in, as an example, because they knew that if they had a concrete load come in at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning, people were tired, more injuries would happen. Yeah. But they worked out that maybe at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, that was a better time to do it. And that's the use of data, collecting this data. And I think we can use mobile technology, mobile phone technology a lot more. Jack?
Yeah, that's good.
I think I'm going to take us back a little further. I mean, I remember when, I won't say when we started, but a dozen years ago, the major problem was around data and size of data. We were limited by what you could get on a hard drive or store on a server. And then that one went, and then it was about how do you integrate between different software. Now, neither of them are particular considerations, both need to be dealt with, but it's that whole to Daniel's point where we're looking at progress on site. Daniel and I used to go out and play what we called the materials on site game, where he and I would put on our hard hats and our clean vis, high vis, and we would go out and we would stare at things and go, what do you think that is? And then we would try and measure it because we were both young quantity surveyors, and we would be trying to measure things, and then we would go back and we would play the materials on site game with the older guys in the office, and we would describe what we'd seen and they would tell us what it really was. So, to Daniel's point, you don't have to do that anymore. You can be far more accurate about vested materials, about what's on site. Our field management piece about progress is also exceptional. Where you're getting data from, you're getting data from your contractors, flowing in, that's easy to check. There's photographs, there's progress. None of our dodgy going out with a wheel to measure things. You've got a far better way of progressing now. For me, the other innovation has got to be people. So, in 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 the recent past, you would have a few people who were experts. To Daniel's point about phones, everyone can navigate a phone these days, certainly of working age anyway. And I think the whole, the approvals process, and part of what we're very strong on is that capture of change, where stuff started off as one thing and it's moved on. And the approval of change, now you can workflow it. You can take advantage of. I've worked in organizations and recently where the hierarchy for approvals is so flat, that the guy at the top is getting the information on the same day as his functional and technical experts, and everybody's reviewing it, and we're putting lots of effort. Why not create the proper hierarchy? So by the time it gets to the program director, he's reviewing it not on technical correctness, but he's reviewing on it on a strategic basis. So do I want to make this change? Can I absorb it into my schedule? Is someone else paying? Am I paying? What are the significant impacts of it? I think all of those things start to change. And, that involvement makes the reporting piece much easier as well. The high level single point of access, getting in there, looking at dashboards. So, it won't make you intelligent, but it'll make you informed, and it'll give you the opportunity to identify where are your issues, and then drill down so you can get to a person. Maybe you got, dare I say, a poor performer or a great performer, and you can pick that out of the system because everything's going as it should or everything's not. Or, why is it a particular thing we never managed to do it? To Daniel's point on the safety, it's because all of our pours start at 7:30 on a Monday morning. Oh, hang on a minute. That's why we keep not getting these right. That's why we keep running out of concrete, or we're not prepared, or the steel needs, it just gives you that, it gives you a more rounded data set to make decisions on. And I think that's the innovation. And everybody is far better with data these days because you don't have to deal with the raw data. You're now looking at something that's been shuffled into far more usable packages. So for me, it's people, accessibility, all of those things are the innovation, all carried forward by developments in software.
Yeah, that's great stuff, guys. And for the words that kind of ring out to me, for listening to you is, it has reliability, it has resilience, the workload, the size of the data workload, just enormous what we can handle today. And by the way, from an owner's perspective, that all impacts cash flow, right? Having that availability of what was installed and who can I pay, who should I pay, more importantly, for the work completed. All great stuff. Guys, I smiled a couple of times because you guys were walking right into my next question is, what advice would you give to the up and coming, the next generation program and project controls professional based on all of your experience? Yeah, just make this a quick hit, guys. We're coming up at the top of the hour. What advice? I'd love to hear from both of you. What's one thing you'd want to share with that next generation?
Shall I go?
I think they go ahead, Jack.
So, I mean, for me, I think it's getting that grip of the basics and doing the basics well. We quite often find that the basics have been overlooked in the desperation to get ahead. The schedule, it's not a schedule if you haven't got a means of progressing it. And if you can't align your cost to it, then you can't see what you've spent. I mean, it's just getting those basics right. And even I've jumped ahead there. And the basics are get the scope right first.
That's dead right. Get that first.
Get the scope written down and agreed and understood. So, I mean, for me, it's the basics still need to be in place. And then, I mean, I've seen some great stuff from, they may well be new into the control space, but these young people, I say young people, God, I sound about 100. The people who are now landing in the workplace, they've been using technology all of their lives. They have an expectation that it will do what they want without being burdened by it doesn't have that capability. So that expectation drives development, drives innovation. I think that is the piece. get the basics, never lose that expectation that it should do what you think it should do.
But also remember, when you set your scope of work, you're not expected to know everything precisely. You know what you know. Embrace change. So move forward through time, through the development of your project. You take budgets that you set, you define them more, you bring them into live control accounts, you make change. No one expects you to know everything from day one, because everything changes all the time, as we've said. And it's the change control. Have control over change, and you'll do well.